A very good afternoon to all of you, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this India at 75 Fireside Chat. I have a dream shaping the India of 100 through art and culture with none other than Kiran Nadar. She's the chairperson of the Kiran Nadar Museum of Art, trustee of the Shiv Nadar Foundation, and I think has profoundly shaped and inspired, I think, the Indian art world definitely, but I think the impact of this is one that is going to be significant globally too over the years to come. I think the ability for using global renowned museums and bringing them and integrating them with Indian art in different shapes and forms is something that we really hope a collaboration like that can emerge as we look at the future. But this is something that Kiran has already been able to achieve. I think art and institution building and philanthropy is something that I think you're very passionate about, Kiran, and it comes naturally to you. And you have really through the Nadar Foundation also seen how over $900 million has got deployed to create institutions of transforming, education, nurturing India's next generation of leaders, amongst many other causes that I believe are so relevant, especially as we look at the future of India, especially India over the next 25 years. Kiran has also been honored and consistently recognized for a contribution. I think the Knight of the Legion of Honor, the highest French civilian award, comes also as a outstanding contribution to art and a commitment to providing greater access to culture, both nationally, internationally. And I think there are many other awards, and I can keep talking about Kiran and take up the next 45 minutes. But I think we are here to have a conversation around how do we really see India shape itself up over the next 25 years. We've celebrated 75 years of independence, thousands of years of culture as a country, which we tend to forget many a times. But important as we look at ourselves where we are today, how will the next 25 years really shape up? And I think that cannot be achieved or realized without having a passion, an aspiration, a dream. So Kiran, let me begin by asking you, when you wake up in the morning, in one of the mornings here, and you had woken up after you had dreamt about what India would look like in 2047. How would you describe that dream? What would you like to see India be in the next 25 years?
Arjun, my dream for India is on many, many various levels, but I'm going to here talk about art and culture more specifically rather than the other realms, which, although I'm involved with, there are a lot of other people who will contribute on those as well. Let's start with art and culture. I think the heritage of India over pre-independence and after independence, we have such a rich heritage. I mean, if we look at both in terms of the culture aspect, the art aspect, in every way, we have a great heritage to carry forward. I think, unfortunately, we haven't really delivered on the promises of the past in the way we should have. There are many miles today that we have to achieve to magnify this dream that I feel is so important. Education and art are kind of hand in hand. I think what we achieve in education has a big role to play with the art and culture aspect. So if we can merge both those aspects, I think there will be a great step forward. So I just feel we should make a much larger effort to make the soft power of India more important than it has been in the years. So what we can deliver, I think, is the dream that I have.
No, I think people like you have, demonstrated that, right, over all these years. So give me a little insight, Kiran. How did you get so passionate about art and culture? Like, what were the triggers? What made it so close to your heart, right? And it's interesting because, like what you said, if education can change that in the minds of millions of Indians, right? It is a very powerful thought that you just shared. So, how did it happen to you?
Well, it's a bit of I really don't know if I can give a complete answer to that. I had an interest in art, but it started with a wanting to build art for myself and for my home, and thereby delving into this. But soon it widened to decide that the Indian space needed private individuals to contribute to art, because it isn't just the role of the government. The government has many, many other issues that they have to deal with. So if the private sector can do their bit to help promoting art and culture, then I thought it would be something that I would take up in some way. I never imagined it was going to grow at the pace that it has, and how it's going to become all important. But we started about 13 years ago. And this 13 years has been a period of great discovery for me as well. I don't know if I knew exactly where I was going when I started. But today, I am very, very committed to doing things and making art and culture in the next 25 years a very important aspect in the growth of Indian soft power and economy.
No, I think that's it always starts somewhere, and for you it started, as you mentioned, as a collector, and of course I know you were awarded Collector of the Year in 2018 by India Today Awards, and of course also one of the awards is for the Public Art of the Year, and many other things around your collection. So definitely would be good to understand your collection of art and what that is, and see what does that art truly represent, right? Because with the number of different pieces that you have, but coming to really how do we build this culture, right? What you rightly mentioned, that if we want to have more and more people involved around promoting. So let's first start with the promotion, and then really talk more about what people need to do. What have you done, right? Because I think there is a lot of power in the private sector, philanthropy, many other pieces that are moving in the Indian ecosystem that can enable and strengthen this, right? So what do you feel one can do to promote art and culture, right? Maybe some of the examples that you've done well, and what can others and larger corporates and others do to enhance that?
Okay, so as far as we are concerned, we have done quite a lot with regard to education, school education, getting kids into the museum, to widen the sort of scope of people who can visit, and therefore saying that if parents don't bring kids, maybe the kids will bring their parents, and therefore we will get a larger number of people who will contribute to Indian art and culture. The next is, of course, we have two spaces which are already there. One is in Saket, one is in Noida. But we are in the process of building a standalone museum, which is going to be a very large project, which is going to be ready in about 2.5 to 3 years. And there we are promoting not just art, we are promoting art and culture. So we are looking at linking the two aspects, which we feel that one will sort of feed on the other. So if we're doing a museum, then if you have cultural center, people who are interested in the cultural center will then eventually visit the museum, and vice versa. So this is the aspect that I'm very keen on promoting, so that both these can become important. And of course, looking at our heritage, we can put that into the public mind, get people much more interested. And I do find that over the last 12, 13 years, interests have widened, but not to the extent that I would have liked. So I'm hoping that as the next 25 years, which are so important to us, reaching 100, this interest in people's mind in art and in culture is going to become much more important.
No, I think, putting up these, museums, and actually what you said, this 2.5, 3 year project to establish something that will be very significant, do we need more of these efforts? Do we need more collaboration to make these efforts larger than what they are? How do you see, how can other private, industry sectors, others who believe in the promotion of arts and culture, can they partner with you? Is there a way to, or do you think we need more industry houses to be doing a lot more? How do you see this, becoming more scale than just a pocket of excellence, right? With India, Kiran, as we always say, we have great things which happen in pockets of excellence, but to really rivet that, the spread and the larger base, how do we make that happen?
Okay, so when I started the museum, I thought it would be an example that a lot more people within the private sector would come in. Unfortunately, that hasn't happened, maybe for a couple of reasons. It's not, it's an expensive endeavor. It's not easy to set up a museum at private cost. It's a difficult journey. And I think people are hesitant to put in that much of their own private endorsements into this line. Also, the government needs, I think, to do more to encourage the private sector and other forms of people to encourage them in whichever way. I don't know what the ways are, I can't spell out, but there will be methods where I think if they give encouragement to the private sector, people will make the effort to come in. It cannot be done with one person for sure. It needs a few giant steps. Of course, I think the government has also talked about, very recently, Mr. Modi has talked about setting up one of the largest endeavors to set up a public museum where the South Block and North Block are. And that's a very, very interesting concept to be going into, and I'm sure they will deliver on that. So there are things that are going to be very exciting for art and culture, but what is important is the interest that people must get. I find Delhi's interest in art and culture is much less than in, say, Calcutta or Bombay. I think maybe because it's the bureaucratic center of the country, that has an emphasis, a bit like Washington, D.C. and New York. But if you go to Calcutta or Bombay, I find their interest in art is a lot more. So that, I think, will at some stage permeate here as well. I mean, I find people are happier going to malls than coming to a museum. And that is something that we need to change.
No, I think you're right. It's it's a virtuous circle, right? So if you have more people coming into museums, you'll find more corporates willing to invest into that, and also what you mentioned rightly, government being able to give some fiscal incentives, right? Whether if you're specifically contributing to some specific sectors. And, one of the key pillars of the soft power that you did mention, which is being incorporated into this larger vision for India at 100 is around, of course, arts and culture, tourism, sports. And I think you will see, more incentives coming in from governments, both nationally as well as, at a state level. And, even districts, because I think there is so much culture, Kiran, at a local level in India, and it's so different across different states. So, we need to figure out how people can promote, culture and arts at pretty much every level. How do we see Indian artisans, how do their products actually get sold better in India? Very often we find a large number of global people interested in that, and of course we have to connect, the supply chain in a manner. So I think there's a lot to art and culture, that we will need to work on, over these next 25 years. But when we talk of local, it's very nice you raise Bombay and you raise Calcutta as, the cities where a lot can happen, a lot more interest is available. But do you see that happening in maybe more cities? Do you see it happening in tier 2, tier 3 cities? How do you foresee we can help shape that?
No, there are other. I only talked about the larger areas, but of course there are smaller places where art and culture is being harnessed. But the other point I'd like to make is, as far as tourism is concerned, I think the heritage we haven't really promoted it to the best of our capabilities. I think if Singapore has a larger tourist inflow than India, then obviously there's somewhere that we haven't delivered on what we have. Look at the heritage we have. Look at in terms of the places like Hampi or any of these places which could be promoted with more fervor, and make that tourism plan and endeavor that we get people from abroad. We get more people. Of course, people do come. I'm not saying, but I don't think it's adequate. So that's one area, I think, when we look at economic growth, that it'll help if we get art and culture as two major areas that we can promote to get tourists in. Also domestic tourists. It's not just foreign tourists. It's also getting the people of India much more interested. So I think these are areas, if we are able to build on, it'll be a great service to the next 25 years.
Yeah, no, I think we need to, do a lot more PR, a lot more advertising about, the richness of the heritage that we have in India, both globally as well as even within India, right? Many times people don't realize the importance of certain places, or, they get limited to, certain spots itself. But there is so much richness, right, in just visiting and learning and experiencing, different things in different areas. And I think digital and media and all will play a pretty large role. Coming to museums and art, and there's a lot around digital art these days. Digital being a great vehicle, right, to be able to spread art better. As a matter of fact, now we also have digital art that gets valuable. What are your thoughts around some of these new technology and art? How does that kind of come together?
Well, I think, during COVID, we learned a lot more about digital art, because we were sort of forced to look at those ways of promoting our art, and the shows we were doing at the museum, shows that we had done in the past, we were able to show them in digitally. And so therefore it started a new sort of area that we could look at, and which has become very important. People are following art now in the digital way, not just visiting a museum, but keeping in touch with what's happening digitally. So I think that is very important. And I think as time goes on, it will become more important. I think if you look at art in the West also, there is a great emphasis on the digital medium. So I think that is going to make a difference to us.
We connect through one of our businesses with large number of Gen Zs, and these are who we always say as digital always generation, right? They step out of the digital world and to the real world once in a while. That generation, the consumption, the way you present culture, the way you present art, there are so many mediums, right, to make it interactive, especially you talk to children, how do you get, bring in creativity? So I think there's a huge opportunity in jobs and others getting created just to support the growth of art in India, right? And art always has generated curiosity, creativity, and as a part of that, makes it by default very inclusive as well. So how do you see some of these skill sets, right? Because that we need to nurture. Because I know you do a lot with children, and you mentioned even backward children, right? In different parts of the country. So how do we foster better creativity? How do we get more people to look at this in a more interesting manner?
Well, when I look at what we are doing in terms of education, we have that has been one of the mainstays of the foundation, and somehow art is also a part of that education, which I think is important. But we are doing a lot with children from backward, underdeveloped families, family incomes of less than 100,000. We have two boarding schools, which have been set up for these families where children have come in. And we started this about, I think 11, 12 years ago. And the students have today gone to places like Harvard, they've gone to Stanford. We managed to get this to grow. But those kids also, when I go and look at what they're studying, there is such an interest in art there as well. In these sort of children from, and it's mainly UP that we were concentrating on. And these children from UP have such their own finesse of drawing and painting, which has come from within their own selves, and they have taken to that. So we encourage that, and we have art programs, we have competitions. We do try and do everything at every level, not just for the super affluent or people in good schools. We do it at every level and try and encourage these kids to come in, and also at government school level as well.
No, I think what you mentioned, this uniqueness that different children will bring from different, states and different cultures based on the way they see the world from their vantage point is so important today, right? Because that's what's going to shape the future of this country, right? The way 1.4 billion imagine the next 25 years is what will create it, right? You can't create something that you can't imagine. So yeah, I think art also empowers people to imagine, right? I mean,
exactly. So it allows them to dream. I mean, your title, yes, that I have a dream, yeah, I think is really reflective in art, yeah, and in culture. Because there is the dream. That is a dream that we can all have uniformly and see how we can deliver in the next 25 years a new heritage to India. Yeah. I have to say, sports was another area that India didn't really have such a great, maybe cricket was, of course, one very important sport, but other sports were at the back burner. But this Asian Games have shown how it has grown in the last 7, 8 years. Sports has really grown. And similarly, I think we can imagine that art and culture will also see this happening and will find a far greater response from the people of India to deliver to us, to all of us, what we need.
Yeah. No, and art can get, what you rightly said, can get expressed in multiple ways, right? It can be a narrative, it can be a dream. Performing arts, we have such richness, in our country, whether it's theater, music, dance, right? And I think all of that, in some shape and form can be kind of grown and emphasized along with sport and tourism, as we continue to build, for the next generation. So I think there is a lot of there is a unifying thread, across all of these soft powers that can, definitely shape, the future of India, very, very differently. Moving to another topic, Kiran, and we have to talk a little bit about, the role of women leadership, right, and women empowerment in a country where 50% of our population is that gender. I think it's again like what you say, the to accelerate the pace of a lot of this change. We always say that we don't have enough women in the workforce today, right? When it comes to India, particularly from an industry perspective and all. But when it comes to art and culture, and in that, is that an area where one can emphasize a larger role for women? I don't know. I mean, I'm just putting up an open question to you. To how do you see, the role of women? Because you're an idol to many women out there. So how do you see women shaping the future of not only art and culture but India over the next 25 years?
Well, let me talk specifically about art and culture for a minute. For many, many years, especially in the field of art, the male domination was much stronger. But over the last 10 years or so, I think there's been a great amount of women artists who have come in to this field and have become very dominant and very important. So it's not just male artists. It is a lot of women artists who are doing great work, not only art, but also in the field of culture, in the field of music, in the field of dance. I have to tell you, the Kiran Nadar Museum of Art is a very, very heavily woman-oriented KNMA has got a much more emphasis on women working for us. And we're doing very well. So, of course, I'm not going to cut down and say there are no men, they are. But not because we tried to get more women, we just have had a plethora of good people who are from the female gender. And that's great to have. And it's lovely to work with them. So I think we don't need to divide male, female. I think we need to look at the importance of the person who is able to deliver on the job. Mm-hmm. Of course, we have an answer to make to the many, many years that women were not given the same importance. But, this is also there when we look at the Dalits, when we look at the tribals, when we look at the underprivileged in that sense, they were also not given their fair share. But we have countries trying to answer these things for them. And similarly for women, I think it's growing naturally. Many more women are coming especially into the field of art and culture. Mm-hmm. So I am full of enthusiasm as far as that is concerned.
No, I think that's very encouraging to hear. And what you said, that if you have seen this big change and shift in the last 10 years, I think it is important for us to continue to keep that momentum up, motivate more, accelerate, that pace. Ultimately, what you say, whoever is the best will do it better. Of course, I am of a clear opinion. Women do most things much better than men, but that's a different conversation for a different day. But I think the point is that we have to see how we can, look at art and culture also in a very inclusive manner, right? I mean, because there is some underlying sentiment that makes this, inclusive, right? If we really look at the 4 I's that we talk of when we are talking of investment, or we talk of arts and culture, is the investment really in infrastructure, right? How do we get enough infrastructure to be able to build, the right kind of museums, etc., whatever is needed to get more artists, etc., that you mentioned. How do we really have a India-centric but international outlook? How do we also look at areas like inclusive development for this sector? And at the end of the day, this is one thing that has to be done with great levels of integrity, right? Do you see all of these things actually coming together over these next 20-25 years? And if at all, any examples that you want to share, which you think has stand out from an India perspective? Because you've had such a large global exposure in this space, right? How do we really compare when we are positioned globally? What can we do better? Are there any learnings and things like that?
Well, there are a lot of learnings, but it's very difficult to compare India, let's say, with the US or with one of the more developed countries. I think the closest we can go to a comparison would be, again, something that maybe not be taken very well, but would be with China. Because we both the countries come from a very rich heritage. But China has developed art and culture in a phenomenal way. They have encouraged private museums. I think in Beijing itself, there are about 100 private museums. That has not happened just naturally that people have built. I think it has been encouraged by what the government has done. While I don't hold any I don't recommend China in any way. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm just saying that these two countries have some commonality. When we had the financial crisis in 2008, where what was that called? The
global financial crisis.
Global financial, yeah. At that time, Indian art and Chinese art was roughly at the same price. I think today they are at least 50 times more, getting much more for their artists than we are able to get. So it just shows the growth of Chinese art that has taken place. Also, the collectors of Chinese art are mainly from China. In India, we don't have a very, very large collector base. It is still, it's there, but it should be much larger. We should get many more collectors interested in Indian art and start collecting it, because it's something that, you can have a great home and you can have a great property, but having the art of your country in it is something also that is important.
No, I think that's a great thought, and I think we have 250 million households, and if each one had at least one piece of art representative of India or of Indian art in their homes, I think is itself a large contribution that people can make, and it's more about understanding and being able to appreciate what you have at home, right? It's also something that you can talk about. I know it may not happen, but that's a great dream to have. Kiran, for these 25 years, can every single home in India, have a piece of art in there created by an Indian?
And it doesn't have to be something which is exorbitantly expensive. You can, maybe you paint something yourself.
Yeah.
It just shows an interest you may take in saying that art is important to me. I would like to have it in my home.
Yeah. No, and I think what we were talking earlier, right? Like when you imagine it, it's the dream, it's putting that to paper, right? Or to whatever canvas, or expressing it in any shape and form. I think is also a great way to promote, culture. So when we talk of how industry, government, and others can work together, I think taking a larger vision, like an aspirational vision like this, I think it's come up in our conversation, could be something we could definitely explore. And each one can take, this is something one can do at a neighborhood level, to ensure that, okay, in my neighborhood, how do we get different kinds of, art things into people's homes? How do they, basically, what you rightly said, it's not the cost or it's not that. How do you create a
Yeah.
culture of appreciating art, participating in art, and making that happen, right?
Yeah,
So,
I mean, even in local neighborhoods, running some art courses or doing maybe you do carpentry or you do clay or you do workshops or you start looking at tribal art. Tribal art has such a rich culture now, and tribal art is really coming into its own, which is very good, which is, I think, another aspect. Uh, of course, modern and contemporary and miniatures, and they're really important. But tribal art is also getting a certain importance in India, which is very good.
No, I think art, what you rightly said, connects to people from many, many different ways, right? And I think that's what, it doesn't matter how it connects to an individual or to a person, but if every household and every Indian can actually do that, I think it will also create a new generation of artists and people who will participate in making that their livelihood, right? I mean, in terms of numbers and that, Kiran, I think for a size of our population, we are probably much less invested in that. And maybe your example of China was also because they had a lot more Chinese artists who delivered great quality of work that, collectors came in, right? So how does that ecosystem really work or shape up?
I don't think it's that. I think it started with, of course, they had maybe more contemporary artists. I don't know if they had more, but I think their population was maybe at a had more investment capabilities. And they looked at the situation that in New York, say, if you have a $1 million apartment, you own a $1 million apartment, you will have art worth 5 million. That is the truth of the matter. So maybe the Chinese investors looked at that and said, oh, art is an important asset class. In India, we never looked at art. We looked at jewelry as an asset class. We looked at other aspects. But art was not an important asset class for us. And I think in this next 5 years, I think people are going to understand that art is an important asset class.
And I think if you see the way value of art has appreciated, especially good art, I think it far outpaces many other forms of investment. Right?
Exactly.
So I know a lot of wealth managers and others nowadays talk about art as an investment. Any thoughts around how, again, is that something that is sustainable, that can grow? You really can see large numbers of people investing in art more as an investment, besides the passion and the culture for that?
It's going to be part investment and part a love for the art. Yeah. I've just come back from Mumbai. Mumbai had its first Mumbai Art Fair. It was a great success. It was fantastically organized. They had about 50 odd galleries who were participating. The first day they had, I think, 5,000 people a day visiting. From very young, when I say very young, I mean 20, 25-year-old people who were interested to start looking at art, collecting as something they'd like to do. To people who were interested in art for themselves. So it was really a fantastic 5 days that was spent there. And now the Delhi Art Fair comes up in end of January. So all these things are going to definitely continue to make an importance for collectors. And I do see that aspect growing, definitely.
No, and as our per capita income over these next 25 years will increase, because we are looking at a very high economic growth rate. I think the disposable income for people will also, enable
Yeah.
more purchase in art. And, when you rightly said is the love of art along with an investment, which kind of makes this a more, a proposition that is hard to resist and maybe one can push for. So I think there are many angles to how art can really, continue to grow over these next, 25 years. I mean, we can, keep talking, Kiran, and never have an end to conversations like this. But I see that we have a few minutes left. But I think two things I really want you to, to share. One is really about if you were to talk to, upcoming artists, curators, all those who are playing a role in the world of art and culture in India today, right? What would your message be? Because it's not only really about doing it for India, but I think India has today a position to be able to shape a large part of the global narrative, and the rest of the world. Art is very positive. So what would your message be to that community?
Okay, so my message would be, I mean, twofold. One is, of course, to the artists, curators, and people who are involved with the Indian art scene, how they should see the growth pattern and how should they get involved in a larger way, etc. But the other bit would be to young collectors, that they should look at art not only as an investment and say, oh, 3 years later, what will this art be worth? I don't think that is the essence of collecting. Essence of collecting is looking at the art, saying, I really like it. And would it be worth something 5 years later? So while you look at those two aspects, you give the emphasis on the first one. So that is my advice to collectors. But as far as the artists and the sort of people like curators and as far as they are concerned, I think they have a role to play. And I think a lot of them today are playing. There is a lot more people who are coming in to this world. I mean, to get a good curator is very tough. We are looking, with the new museum being set up, we are looking for a lot of people to employ. It's not easy to find the people. So they need to be trained, they need to grow. And of course, there is going to be a lot of employment opportunities which will come. So I think the next 25 years in the art world are going to be very exciting.
No, lovely. And we'll end this conversation with one question with two parts. I just thought it would be good for us to know what is your favorite piece of art that you own or you have. I know it's very hard to pick between many that which are very close to your heart. And second part to that question is that if you had to put an artist impression of something, right? What would that be? I mean, I know very hard to describe in words, but if you had to put something out there, what would you describe that to be? And we'll end with that.
Okay, the first part is it's like saying who's your favorite child. But yes, you do have a favorite.
So
You could have a favorite child. So I'll tell you the artists who are really, really important to me.
Sure.
One is Ravi Verma. I have some wonderful works of his, and I think he's early 20th century artist. And out of the progressives, I think I have a special place for Sousa. I have, and Sousa and actually Sousa, Raza and Hussain. These three progressives have played a great role in my collecting that I have done. I mean, I could tell you that my favorite Sousa's work is maybe that's difficult. Okay, my favorite Raza's work is easier. It's it's a work that it was one of the first works that I acquired from an art auction. What is my favorite Raza work? Saurashtra. Sorry, I'm having these memory things. Saurashtra. And I think my favorite Hussain work is Ganga Jamna Saraswati. So these are the two works. And of course, Suza's work is The Birth. So these are three artists. And then Ravi Verma, I think my most favorite work is Radha in the Moonlight. So I've named 4 works, which are very important, but there are lots. And I haven't named any of the contemporary, because then I could go on and on.
No, I fully understand. And just within these words that you have used, there's so much of culture, right? You talk of Ganga, Jamuna, Swaraj. I mean, so much of India just in this. And I mean, if you go into hundreds of those, it just shows the connection between art and culture.
These artists, the progressives, took a lot out of looking at our miniature tradition.
Right.
That was the inspiration in a lot of ways. So it's been a fantastic journey for them as well.
I can imagine. And if you were to paint a canvas and looking, which we can all see, what would that be?
I sadly don't have any art painting skills, so I'm not going to put myself there, because I can't paint for peanuts.
Okay, so maybe we will put a real great positive picture of India, and work towards shaping that, and maybe hope that is something that will adorn your walls and the walls of 250 million homes, as we said, something that represents this country, that is, representative of our culture, and really, give it the due importance that this whole space deserves. Kiran, has been just an absolute pleasure chatting with you.
Rajan, thank you
and a
very
great
much.
Conversation, and look forward to to working closer with you as we build a lot of these things we have discussed collectively, and see how we can partner to enhance this field.
I don't know 25 years later if I'll still be around, but I just want to say that I want the Kiran Nadar Museum of Art to be a heritage for many, many years beyond my lifetime, and be there for all time for people to see and enjoy.
Absolutely, and we'll make sure that happens irrespective. But I'm sure you'll be a part of this process as we continue to build this narrative, for India. And I'm sure the museum will be representative of that. So thank you again. Thank you
very much.
Take
care.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
How do I take? What do I do?